One thing that's important to understand about transduction is that transduction is the actual change process. So what happens is, first of all, we're going to start with our stimulation of some sort, such as seeing a butterfly in this case. We get a visual representation. Now, what we're not actually seeing, though, is a butterfly. We're actually seeing these light waves, which is known as the stimulation. When those light waves hit the receptor site, so in this case the eye is going to be the receptor. Now in other senses, such as the ear is going to be the sensor for say auditory signals. In the case of touch, you would have your skin being a primary receptor for those different sensations. But in this case, the light waves are the sensations that are received by the receptors on the eye. And transduction is that process from when we change from a stimulation and we turn that into a neural signal. So ultimately what's happening is we have this external something, in this case again a light wave, and it goes through the receptor site, in this case the eye, and turns into a neural image. Okay, so recognizing that transduction is that change process. It's when we're actually going from the light waves to the neural signals. As long as it's in that neural signal process, that's what's known as a sensation. Okay, so we have our stimulation is from the outside. The transduction is the actual change that's happening, going from that stimulation to a neural signal. When it's a neural signal, that's when it's a sensation. And then it becomes a perception when we put meaning to it. So the perception is going on in the brain, and we're adding the meaning in the appropriate parts of the brain. So though we're primarily going to be going to the parts of the brain that have to do with the visual processing to start with, that information then gets processed in the appropriate areas in the association cortexes that are showing up. Now, what's important to recognize then is that means that our brains are not actually sensing the world directly. Rather, we're basing everything off of perceptions that we're recognizing. So when we look at a particular scenario, we can have 100 people who all have the same sensation. So maybe they all go to see the same movie, or they all see the same event happening. But the perception is then the meaning that we individually attach, which is going to be different person to person. Now, as we go through these next sections, we want to consider specifically the transduction of the visual process. We want to be considering the roles of rods and cones, and we also want to be thinking about where we're starting from and where we're ending in terms of the visual sensation. Once we cover the visual sensation, we'll then go in and cover the auditory transduction process as well. So a little bit of information about our human senses. We know that we have 5 primary senses. We have our vision, our hearing, we have our tactile sensing, our smelling, and our tasting. And each of these individual senses has a different type of stimulus. So again, keeping in mind that the stimulus is that external component. So the light waves, not the butterfly, but the light waves themselves. The sound waves are coming from the outside. If we touch something, that's coming from the outside. If we are introducing some sort of smell or taste, and that is all external. And then the sense organ, also known as the receptor site, is essentially allowing us to turn that stimulus through the transduction process into a sensation. So the sense organ is really the big part that brings in the sensation, and then the receptors are the specific areas in each of those sense organs that actually change the stimulus to that neural impulse.